Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular scheduled meeting for the Beavercreek City Council on September 24th. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Curran?
Here.
Councilmember Literal?
Here.
Councilmember Rushing?
Here.
Councilmember Upton?
Here.
Councilmember Van?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Mayor Stone?
Here. And I'd like to turn this over to Councilmember Rushing for the pledge, please.
Thank you, sir. If you all will rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you all would remain standing and have a moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Thank you. We have an agenda before us. Are there any corrections, changes?
Seeing none, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as submitted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on. Approval of the minutes. August 27th, 2018, regular scheduled meeting minutes. Any comments?
Seeing no changes, make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the August 27th, 2018 regular meeting as submitted. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next, the minutes for the September 10th, 2018 regular meeting. Any changes?
Mr. Mayor, if there's no comment, I'd move for approval of September 10th regular meeting minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for September 10th as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Abstentions? Motion carries. Ordinance, resolutions, and PUDs. First on the agenda is ordinance 18-17.
This is a third reading of an ordinance amending ordinance number 9362, 9566, 9616, 9772, the Beavercreek Traffic Improvement District Ordinance, by amending the Transportation System Improvement Fee Schedule for District Number 1, amending the fee per trip schedule for District Number 1, and amending certain other provisions of the same ordinance.
Thank you. This is the third reading. This ordinance was sponsored by Councilmember Curran. Any discussion? Councilmember?
So moved.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 18-17. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same.
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion does carry. Thank you. Next, ordinance 18-18.
This is a second reading of an ordinance to declare certain city-owned property interests as surplus and to approve the conveyance of an access easement on city-owned property generally known as the Creekside Trail right-of-way.
Thank you. Hello, hello.
Good evening. I just wanted to mention that I know at the last council meeting there was a request for us to send this information out to adjoining property owners. I just want to let council know a letter went out September the 13th explaining about the request for the easement and to let them know about this public hearing this evening if they wanted to make comments.
Thank you.
Thanks
And
for the
that-
follow-up. Thanks for the follow-up.
Yeah. That said, this is the second reading of this ordinance, so it is a public hearing. Is there anyone present this evening who would like to address council on this issue? Seeing none, this will naturally move on to the third reading unless there's some discussion from council. Anyone? All right. Next item, ordinance 18-19.
This is the first reading of an ordinance repealing current Chapter 97 Trees, Weeds, and Shrubs of the City of Beavercreek Code of Ordinances and adopting new Chapter 97 Trees, Weeds, and Shrubs of the City of Beavercreek Code of Ordinances.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I am Zach White, the Assistant Superintendent of Public Administrative Services. I'm here tonight to talk to you about City Ordinance Chapter 97, Weeds, Trees, and Shrubs. The City of Beavercreek is working to become designated as Tree City USA, and part of working towards designation, we are required to go through and review and update the city ordinance as it pertains to trees. The Tree Advisory Board, along with city staff, reviewed and are recommending the following changes. Definitions were added to Chapter 97.02. In Chapter 9704, trees prohibited, staff developed a list of trees for approval within, planting within public right-of-ways, and we use that list rather than spelling out trees that we cannot plant. In Chapter 9705, location of trees, text was added regarding how far trees can be planted from the street corners, fire hydrants, curbs, and other trees. In Chapter 9706, tree removal, per discussion from last week's work session, we are leaving the text as it was stated where the city is responsible for the removal and expense of trees removed from public right-of-ways. There's also text that was added stating whenever trees are removed from public right-of-way, 25% of those trees will be replanted within public right-of-way. And finally, in tree trimming, there's additional clarification to states the duty of the abutting property owner to remove trees in a manner that will not obstruct streetlights, street signs, or pedestrian or vehicular traffic.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There may be some questions here in just a moment.
Okay.
This is being the first reading. We will open this up for public input. If there's anyone tonight that would like to address council on this ordinance. Seeing none, we will open it up to questions. Does anybody have any questions?
I just have one. Thank you for the input. You guys have done a wonderful job, as always, on this information. And I think I know this, but I just want to double check my notes. Do we have an arborist on staff or an
Yes.
arborist that we contract with?
We have an city arborist on staff.
Okay,
He's a certified
but it's
arborist.
not, it's the certified arborist?
Correct, through the ISA.
Okay, through the ISA, okay. So
And he is also as a tree risk assessment certification as well.
Okay, because we talked about that, I think, last year, and I just wanted to
Yes.
make sure that we didn't contract, but we actually had someone that was on staff that was qualified.
That's correct, we have somebody on staff.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, reaffirm the height that the branches have to be above the public sidewalks and the responsibility to trim those?
Yes, I believe it is 8 feet above sidewalks
8
and
feet?
12 feet above roads.
All right, okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, one question. Zach, thanks for taking the lead on this update here, appreciate it. Question really is around that 9704 on trees prohibited. Why would we have a list of approved versus just a more limited list of not approved trees?
We've identified some trees with a more vertical growth habit, some ones that are going to be a little bit more strong for use along streets and sidewalks, ones that are not going to buckle the sidewalks and the streets. Also some trees that are not going to break out as easily within the wind. And it's a list that we can update on a more regular basis so that we can update, say, annually or as needed. If there's a tree that has a certain pest problem, we can go ahead and eliminate that and find a replacement. But all of these trees are ones that our staff has identified as being appropriate for right-of-way plantings.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Do I have a motion to move this on to second, third?
Motion to move.
Second.
We're gonna move tonight. I have a motion and a second to move ordinance 18-20 on to the second and third reading.
You quit barking out, the rest of us get a chance.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next, ordinance 18-21.
This is the first, 20.
20, there we go.
This is the
I'm trying to
first-
move it along, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go with 20 then. You have to, please.
This is the first reading of an ordinance adopting new section 9638, small cell facilities and wireless support structures of the City of Beavercreek Code of Ordinances.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. McHugh, you're going to bring us up on this?
Yes. Glad to, Mayor and Council. What you have before you is the small cell facilities ordinance, wireless. And what this, if you recall, just brief history, this is as a result of Ohio House Bill 478, which predecessor was 331. That bill, which the city of Beavercreek with many other communities were parties in litigation to challenge that because of there were a number of issues. I'm not going to go through it because that was over. The court found that bill did in fact have issues. As a result, through negotiations, the result is this particular bill, which is now these standards. It is not within the zoning code. This is more regulation. It will control small cell antennas. These are small antennas. These are not large towers. Generally, they're going to be 6 foot in cubic volume, the size of the antenna. The actual ground equipment should be around 28 cubic feet, so again, fairly small. They're 10-year application. Once you get a application permit, it's 10 years renewable. Technically it rolls on for every 5 years thereafter. Generally, it is up to 40 feet, though there are provisions that if there are others within 300 feet, then it could be 35 feet, depending on the size of any poles within that area. It technically might be even 30 feet, but in most cases, just think of 40 feet. That's effectively. It is intended that these can be on existing right-of-way structures and in the right-of-way. The design guidelines, and I think this is important, is that as opposed to putting the design guidelines actually in this particular ordinance, they will be handled through the city engineer. One of the benefits of doing that is that this technology changes at times very frequently. It seems like at times it could be monthly or certainly every once a year. And what we're trying to do is make it very flexible, so as technology changes, the design guidelines can also be changed very quickly to meet whatever requirements the new technology, because I think we should all recognize that these small cells are just, certainly this is not the last of what we're going to see. I can't tell you what we're going to see next, but with the 5G network push that in order to make that occur, that you need a lot of antennas. And so that is what is driving this, and frankly, it's the consumer, us, who want and use our phones a lot, and we want more and more out of them, and in order to do so, in order to make it go work, and especially in condensed areas where there's a lot of traffic, traffic in the sense of small cellular traffic, that's what this is addressing. So these are standards. The state's very clear. These are, we have to adopt pretty much as is, and that's what we're doing.
So we can expect to see a lot of these on water towers.
I think you're going to see them on light poles and things that are separate little poles, separate low.
More
than a mailbox.
More than on a municipal.
Potentially more than, but a lot of the water tower ones were really set up to be substitutes for the tall pole, because most water towers are
Right.
substantially higher.
Yeah.
And so those were more set up to be a regular, instead of having the monopole
Okay.
large tower, what governments worked with the companies was to say, okay, here's a tall structure, the water tower, put your antennas on top. And that was done in many cases, as opposed to putting the monopole on. These, though, this is a different, really, it's a different form of technology.
Okay.
It's much smaller. So. And
So
yes,
how does this impact the letter we just signed last meeting?
with the
where
FCC?
FCC is coming out. with
Well,
license?
I
Are we
mean,
trying to circumvent their movements, or?
well, unfortunately, the FCC ultimately, and the federal courts will ultimately have final jurisdiction, but certainly the intent here, and I think one of the intents of the state of Ohio, is to address and adopt standards so that we can say to the FCC and the companies are, gone along with this because they negotiated this, that we in fact have our own standards. We do not need FCC standards coming in that are now contrary to this, because I think this is a workable solution. I mean, if you recall, under 331, there were provisions in there that simply, while this bill is not perfect, it is a far improvement over the first one, which clearly was extremely one-sided. Certainly to the extent the city can, any opportunity tell the FCC that we're not in favor of it. I would hope the FCC would look at it and say, Ohio, you have regulations, cities, you have regulations, we'll exempt you because you already have them. For those states that have not gone this, then, you know, maybe that's the answer, but for us, I think we have a viable solution at this point.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments?
So you've requested that we have 3 readings, but then it be passed as an emergency? And could you explain that?
Yes, please. Yes, on third reading as an emergency.
And why is that?
Why? Well, the reason being is that we want, anticipating that we may get applications, we want to put these in effect. Yeah, we don't want to go into default, and we want to have our own regulations. And we've also, one of the critical things is the design guidelines too. You know, I mean, we want to assure that if the city has put in, you know, a couple $100,000 in specific style of post on a road, we want to have design guidelines that say is this type of post. Not that there won't be any small cells, but it will be, you know, spun aluminum of a brown color with a certain look, as opposed to a 40-foot wood pole that is completely out of, you know, it's just not, it doesn't go with the design. And that's really what I think needs to happen, and doing an emergency gets us there quicker.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Sorry, I have a question. Steve, you commented there that the design standards are going to be left to the city engineer.
Correct.
Do we have any other code where we leave it to staff to define the
Well, some of
standards?
with some of the on-site bus stops, council has provided a lot of those regulations go to staff now. That was done a few years ago.
All right.
So that's just one I'm thinking off the top of my head that
Okay.
refers to.
I was just concerned that we're putting in, you know, everything else is pretty well set as far as the design codes, and anything that comes for variance needs to come through, you know, the proper channels here, and we're going to let that differ in this case. I mean, obviously there's precedent there for it, so.
Well, but a lot of times the designs of the poles and style of the poles, the structure of the poles, a lot of times would be the engineer anyway.
Sure.
And a lot of it is much more controlled than probably we would anticipate anyway already. And certainly once the standards, we'll certainly bring them back to council so council can see them. But the intent here is, you know, as changes are made, you do a road project, you may need to change the design standards. And we really don't want to have to go back and change an ordinance every time, you know, if you change some Dayton-Xenia poles, now we need to change it, which means go back and change this. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Similar to any light pole, I mean, the staff decides what's appropriate in a development, for instance, how many, if you have light poles, and they decided to, they're in charge of deciding what the design's gonna be.
If they're like gaslight looking style
Yeah.
versus a very modern style, trying to
I understand
mirror
what
these
you're saying,
together.
this is much more broad, this is a pretty broad.
Yeah. it is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously broad because we don't know what technology's coming or what's going out, but at the same time,
I
you know,
understand.
as much as I like our city engineer today, I might not like the guy tomorrow.
Hey, he's still sitting there. Anyone else? Do I have a motion?
I would move for approval of ordinance 18-20
Second.
And move to the second and third.
and move it to the second and third reading.
I have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 18-20, moving it to the second and third reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, ordinance 18-21.
This is the first reading of an ordinance repealing current section 132.13 panhandling of the City of Beavercreek Code of Ordinances.
Thank you. Mr. McHugh.
Yes, Mayor and Council, again, on this particular one, we're recommending that this ordinance or this section of the code be repealed. It has not been enforced for some time, based on some advice I provided some time ago. But based upon the cases that followed the Reed v. Town v. of Gilbert in this strict scrutiny test, it simply is not going to be enforceable, and to enforce it, I think, just exposes the city. And so therefore, I think we just, council just needs to repeal it. It simply cannot be upheld based upon that case out of Arizona.
All right, comments?
What can we do to prevent panhandling?
Well, based upon the United States Supreme Court's, it's exactly right. It's a freedom of speech, and it is a protected freedom of speech, and therefore, unless some other law is if someone assaults someone, you can't block the right-of-way, things of this nature, but generally, just panhandling itself is a protected form. It's no more, it's the same protected as though, with strict scrutiny, it's as though you put a sign for an election in your front yard. The government has to have an extremely high level reason for that not to regulate it. I mean, effectively, maybe you're blocking traffic, that would be, but otherwise, it's protected. And so panhandling is effectively been raised due to this decision to a level of effectively very little regulation at all anymore. That's the bottom line.
Because
And
it's
that was
just
the
a couple of
United
years
States-
ago that you recommended this legislation.
Well, we did, based upon cases, and then things changed. And we changed things around, and there were some Second District Court of Appeal decisions we tried to mirror after, but the fact is that all the cases subsequent, there's been a number of cases, towns, if we enforce it, it is extremely likely we're going to get sued and it's going to cost us the city. And so based upon the subsequent, this case and other cases, no, I'm not going to sit here and recommend that, the chief have the officers enforce it. It's just exposing the city.
Counselor, could you amplify then on what the existing sections, the tools that we can use? You mentioned them in the...
Well, some communities, you can't block traffic.
All right.
You certainly can't assault people.
Right. Well, you mentioned the ATM, and then you mentioned something
Well, I mean,
else
there's
in
a
the
number of
existing
things in here
sections.
that are coming out, though. I think you're referring to the sections.
Yeah.
Yeah, those, unfortunately, we have to repeal them. Unless someone is committing some other form of crime, this ordinance is simply, if we attached a copy, I don't think we did, simply has to come out.
Was it sections 112-14, 112-19 of the Beavercreek ordinance may provide an alternative in some situations to a citation under the
Well,
panhandling?
but again, it's a different approach than what we
Yeah.
were talking about, pure panhandling.
I understand.
Okay, it is really trying to tie it, but even those, at some point, are gonna be attacked. I mean, panhandling, the ACLU and other groups have made panhandling a real issue, and it's gonna continue to be a real issue for cities. I mean, fortunately, there hadn't been too much litigation around here lately, but it is a problem. I mean, I've talked to the chief a number of times. It is a problem, it'll continue to be a problem.
And we were put on notice by the ACLU, who
Yep.
sent us the notice that we should change our zoning,
Yeah.
or,
Code, yes.
or I'll just leave it to your imagination.
Yeah, and what they didn't realize is that we have not been enforcing the section. But, clearly, if we were, and that's why advice was given, don't enforce this particular section. It needs to be repealed. I mean, clearly, if the United States Supreme Court comes up with another decision, to the extent we can, we'll do what we can, but it is a protected form of speech. And if people act in a traditional panhandling manner, it's protected. I think that's the point.
Won't be the first time we don't like what the Supreme Court decides, but that's...
So we really can't get a handle on it.
Okay. Make a motion to approve ordinance 18-21
Second.
I have a motion and a second to
And
approve
move
ordinance
to the
18.
and move to the second and third.
18-21, moving it to the second and third reading. Any further comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, ordinance 18-22.
This is the first reading of an ordinance to prohibit a right turn against a steady red signal for southbound traffic on Haynes Road at the intersection of Dayton-Xenia Road during school hours.
Good evening.
Hello.
The Engineering Division recently received a request from the Beavercreek School District requesting this new signage to prohibit right turns on red for southbound Haynes at Dayton-Xenia Road. The origin of the request is the crossing guard who's assigned to that intersection reported to the principal at Maine Elementary a lot of vehicles just not stopping, just coming on through, and it's a major route for kids coming to school in the morning. So we're supportive of the school district's request to install this signage to prohibit the right turns on red. And for what it's worth, our traffic code requires this signage to be approved by ordinance by City Council. That's why we're before you here this evening.
Are you going to post those hours?
What we're going to do, there's already a no turn on red sign for vehicles going westbound on Dayton-Xenia at Haynes. We would just take identical signage and just do the same thing for southbound Haynes right there. And I think right now it's posted during school hours. No right turn on red during school hours.
But the sign will say during school hours.
It will, yes.
Thank you. Any further comments? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry, I'm just going to explain. We have not been asking for public input on these. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this ordinance? Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on. Please.
Mr. Mayor, if there's no further comment, I would move to approve ordinance 18-22 and move to the second and third readings.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 18-22, moving into the second and third readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next, resolution 18-42.
This is a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor.
Yes, good evening. This is the third phase of the annual county budget that starts off with the tax budget. You recall that you approved that back in July, Resolution 1827. That got submitted to the county auditors, and the county budget commission met, reviewed our the revenue generated from the levies, and felt that was we had sufficient backup to support the continuation of our levies. So again, what they provided is a preliminary estimation of the tax rates and the revenue generated from that rates, which were identical to the ones that we passed back in July. What'll happen is that the next phase of this actually gets approved by the state. And I think they'll be adjusting those because our current rates that they have proposed for 19 are the exact same ones that we had set up for 18. So I think that they'll end up adjusting it because the property values did go up about 5% this year. So again, the next couple of phases on this is that the directors and the departments have prepared their budgets for consideration, and they'll be meeting with the city manager to discuss their needs and their service levels. And at that point, we'll be bringing back to you a recommended budget. And we do have the two city council budget work sessions already scheduled. They're Monday, November 5th. And then the second one's Monday, November 19th. And those will be advertised and open to the public. And the final step of the process would be on December 10th, I believe, or 11th. You'll be approving the appropriation budget for the 2019 budget. So that will conclude that this entire process. So staff is recommending approving accepting the rates and the revenue generated from them, and we will be moving forward. So,
All right.
be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Anyone have any? Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution 18-42. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Roll
Oh,
call.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry.
May we have a roll call then, please?
Councilmember Literal?
Yes.
Councilmember Rushing?
Yes.
Councilmember Upton?
Yes.
Councilmember Van? Vice Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Councilmember Curran?
Yes.
Mayor Stone?
Yes. Thank you. Next, resolution 18-43.
This is a resolution authorizing the submittal of applications for federal FAST Act funds through the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission.
Thank you. Good evening.
second answer?
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. These projects are the ones we are looking at submitting this year to MVRPC as part of the FAST Act, which is the Federal Transportation Bill, the current one. These come to us from MVRPC every year about the beginning of September for solicitation for new projects. This year we have 7 projects that we're looking at doing. 5 of which are widening projects and 2 of which are sidewalk or side path projects. The widening projects are 1 through 5 up there. We have 3 on Kemp Road, 1 on North Fairfield. I'm sorry, 2 on North Fairfield and 1 on Indian Ripple Road. Then the side path sidewalk projects are on Kemp Road, which is number 6, and Shakertown Road, which is number 7. That one on Shakertown Road will complete the connection from the widening we just finished on Shakertown to Ankeny School, and get us all the way over to Grange Hall Road for what was completed with the reconstruction of that signal. Number 6 is the section in between the 2 legs of Grange Hall that is currently not done. We have sidewalk on both sides. We will have sidewalks on both sides with the future projects that we have coming up for the Grange Hall widening as well as the Kemp widening that will start next year. Number 1 is a new project that we have been getting calls about with accidents out there along Dayton-Xenia Road, or I'm sorry, along North Fairfield Road from Lance Road up to just north of North Road, or Northern Drive. Those are due to having 4 lanes. We don't have a dedicated left turn lane through there. So this would add that dedicated left turn lane through there to help decrease those angle and rear end accidents that we're getting that are results from people trying to make left turns from that through lane. So with that, we do not require any complete streets exemptions this year. All of them will cover all of the complete streets policies needed from MVRPC and ODOT. And then with that, I will entertain any questions you guys have for me.
Anyone? Questions?
Only commentary would be, appreciate you always going after every grant we can get. MVRPC does a lot, and I see a lot come through that organization, so glad we're getting what we can.
Thank you.
Feedback I get is they enjoy the applications they get from Beavercreek because they're so well done. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If there's no further comment, I would move to approve Resolution 18-43.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 18-43. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, Resolution 18-44.
This is a resolution by the county, or by the council of the city of Beavercreek, implementing sections 3735.65 through 373570 of the Ohio Revised Code, establishing and describing the boundaries of a community reinvestment area in the city of Beavercreek, designating a housing office to administer the program, and creating a community reinvestment housing council and a tax incentive review council.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. As was discussed over the last couple of months, probably going back a year, some of the tools we're looking at from an economic development standpoint to stay competitive in the area. CRA was one of the ones that we looked at as one of the immediate action items we could take, and we're here before you to get the ordinance approved. There's still a process that has to be followed after the fact of the approval from council. It still needs approval from the state as far as our legislation is drafted to make sure it's compliant with all the Ohio Revised Code regulations that outline the provisions on how a CRA is administered. But we do currently have a review board in place that will be these projects, should they come through city council, will be reviewed on an annual basis to make sure they're performing as they should. And any project that comes forward for this community, under this community reinvestment area, will be negotiated individually on an individual basis with the city council and the staff. So this doesn't grant anybody any incentives at this point. It's just that it gives us the opportunity to look at these projects on a case-by-case basis, and will be a lot more thorough discussions on more specific level of detail per project. So, but this does pave the way for us, assuming we get this through the state for approval, and we should get some certification from them that we are in compliance, hopefully here in the next month, and hopefully we'll have this in place for the upcoming year and years to follow. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Oh, the housing council, when does that have to be appointed again? Could you?
I think it's after we receive
I think it's after we receive approval.
approval from the
Yeah.
state.
After-
After we receive approval?
Yeah, I mean, first we gotta make sure the state will say this is compliant, and if they want any changes, we have to change
Okay.
it.
So what we'll try to do is cycle that in with our other, if we have to have a separate board, we'll talk to Steve about it, or that we can kind
Yeah.
of do a hybrid with our Turk committee and try to have them all look at this at the same time. But
That's what I would
again,
do.
you'll anticipate, we'll have to put that out for applications as another board that you guys will consider usually in February for some appointments to that board.
Yeah, the other thing, and Jeff, I don't think you said this for the public, but it is only commercial and industrial property.
Correct.
This is not, you can do residential, but residential is not included in this. So on page 2 of the actual legislation, you'll see it's at this.
Right
yeah,
now, right,
at
we'll see
any
how this
point
is
in the
more of a
future,
rollout.
council could change that.
And there are provisions in the ordinance to say we look at this again in 2020, so we will be revisiting this to just get affirmation from council that they want to continue the program, or the opposite, or to amend it.
Anyone else?
Mr. McGrath?
Yes,
Along the lines of the Housing Council, looking at Section 6, 2 members appointed by council, 2 members appointed by the mayor. If we're going to follow our standard board and commission appointment process, I guess, I don't know how that would work. Or is this body going to appoint 4? Or is the mayor going to get two of their own to pick?
My understanding was it'd be a collective 4 by everybody that would be covered, that would cover the mayor and council. I think it would be at the mayor's discretion to have that, his decision be based on council's decision. So we could have all 4 appointed at the same time. But if Steve has a different opinion, let me know.
Is that a process that the state established?
That's the ORC language.
Yeah, it's
It's
kind
not-
of unusual, but you're right, I mean, it's, mayor picks 2,
Right,
council picks 2.
right.
1 member appointed by planning commission, which could be probably somebody on planning commission, and then the majority of members, so the majority, that'd be 5, so 3 of those individuals, they're to pick the final 2 members who are residents. That's the process.
So we'll get to 5, and then we'll have, at the first meeting, we'll invite some, see if we can, at least we'll put it out there and have some applications. So it may not be, those 2 at-large community members may not be appointed by council, but they'll be appointed by the 5 core members of this Community Reinvestment Housing Council. But we still would put it out for advertisements for anybody who'd be interested, so we can bring those forward once that board, the first 5 of that board are
I would
established.
definitely do that, yeah.
If it's a commercial development and it's owned by individuals outside the city, they still would qualify to be on this?
Yeah, I don't know if it has to be residents. We would prefer residents to.
You mean on the
it's-
board?
On the board,
Right.
correct.
Are they on the board or?
On the board.
Okay, I thought maybe really meaning, are they?
Well, they said 2
qualified to get-
community people.
Yeah.
Well, can the community people be the owners of the property?
I would imagine so.
And if they don't live
they
in
own
the city,
property in
but-
Beavercreek, I mean, if we have developers who
Right.
do a lot of work, they could be appointed.
Okay.
I didn't read anything in the ORC that required residency.
Yeah, I don't recall it.
We'll get
I
a
think
chance, we'll get a chance to review this again, though, when that
Right.
time comes.
Once we roll this out, again, the 2-year, we'll look at it, but we will, we'll be in compliance. But I'm pretty sure the language doesn't, it's not specific, it's more members of the community,
Okay.
not specific to residency.
I think to apply for one of our boards, regardless of this board or another, you have to be a qualified elector of the city of Beavercreek,
You do.
With the exception of youth development.
with the exception of
advisory board.
youth. Right, so that would rule out anyone that, we're talking here, business owners that may not live in the city. They would not be a qualified elector.
Right. But we may be able to make an exemption for this process. If we have somebody
Yeah,
lives in
I
the
would think so.
township,
If this is a state.
If it's a
Yes,
commercial
it's
development and
maybe
they
state
own
law
it.
that's dictating
All
what
right,
you
states
do
tell
by
us how we
state.
have to set up this council, not how we appoint to it. And if our appointment process is the same as all of our other boards and commissions, it's got to follow our process.
I'm gonna pull out our code and look at that.
All right.
Yeah, we may very well be, I will pull the code out and look at that, but, depending on that, we may need to, that may be something we need to look at too. Maybe we do
Right.
need to revise it in this particular, in order to get,
Probably gonna have to make some exceptions.
specific business individuals on there. It may be. But,
Yeah, I would
you know,
think if someone that wasn't a qualified elector wanted to be on the board, maybe that's reserved for those 2 spots appointed by the board.
Well, that's my question, because are we still talking about section 6 for Reinvestment Area Housing Council? Because it specifically states that the members shall appoint 2 additional members that shall be residents within the area.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
that's.
So that's 2
I
that's
mean, yeah.
guaranteed.
And the
That's-
area
They
is
had-
effectively the city.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
the
why I
way
just wanted to
area
make
is
sure.
defined, it's
Yeah,
the
It
city.
doesn't say anything about the other 5.
The other
Right.
5 does not,
yeah, but at least 2 have to be residents within the area, within the city. So,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
yeah.
I would think all of them would.
I
And if we have to appoint
Mr.
them,
Upton's
Right.
correct, and
Yeah,
the way
if
our
we're
ordinance,
appointing them.
the way our rules are written now, anybody we appoint to a board or commission is gonna be.
It's gonna be a resident.
Electorate.
right.
and that's how it is for our Turk too, is a residency requirements. That's the way I don't know if the state mandates it, but that's the way it's administered, is you have to be a resident of the city of Beavercreek. But just so, one other point I just forgot to mention is Steve brought up is commercial industrial only. These are for remodeling. It's a 12-year maximum term for, and it's the only thing is it's a incentive on incremental value of the property. So it's exemption of any increased value on a property. So it encourages reinvestment or new construction. So nobody would ever, the taxes that are generated from the improvements would be the exemptions. So there's no go backwards. It's just an exemption for maximum of 12 years for remodeling and a maximum of 15 years for new construction. And again, those are maximums. They can be negotiated. Percentages of those exemptions can be, it range anywhere from 0 to 100, but it can't go over 50% without the permission of the school board.
I would move for approval of Resolution 18-44.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 18-44. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have liquor permits. Chief. Patterson Food Mart.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I do
Good
have
evening.
2 liquor permits. The first is a request for a new liquor permit for Patterson Food Mart. We received a notice from the Division of Liquor Control of a new C1, C2 liquor permit for Patterson Food Mart, 3985 East Patterson. The records checks required by the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Liquor Control were conducted on the business officer shareholders for this application request. And staff is recommending the application move forward with no comment.
I have a
Mr. Mayor,
motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Patterson Food Mart, except without comment.
Second.
I have a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, Chief.
The second permit is a transfer for a liquor permit to GTC Coffee doing business as Winans. Ohio Division of Liquor Control sent us notification reference the transfer of a D2 and D6 liquor permit from Vandalia Coffee LLC doing business as Winans Chocolates and Coffees, 45 Plum Street, first floor, which is in the green, to GTC Coffee LLC, again doing business as Winans, same location. The records checks required by the Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Liquor Control were conducted again, on the business officer shareholders for this application request. And again, staff is recommending the application request move forward with no comment.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, motion to accept without comment.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Next, Mayor's report. It's been a busy day. I'll start with today. I went to Northrop Grumman. A worldwide company purchased ATK, one of our locals, and they had a ribbon cutting for that today. They proudly now have 600 employees in the 2 Beavercreek locations. So it's quite substantial, and they're looking for big things to happen in the future here as well. So they actually indicated will be looking for a manufacturing site in the region as well. So we want to keep them in mind. I'm going to ask Councilmember Van to discuss the Peace Day event we were at in a minute. Foreign officers, the periodic, about 3 or 4 times a year, they bring a group of about 40 different foreign officers from around the world to City Hall here. And so that's tomorrow at about 2:15. If anybody would like to join me, I'd appreciate the company. It's very entertaining, and I enjoy it, they enjoy it, and so they keep coming back. I had the opportunity, I was invited to Coy Middle School for the band students to teach me how to play an instrument.
How'd that work?
Well, let's put it this way. Well, let's not put it that way. It was decided that I would learn to play the saxophone, and the band director kept indicating that the saxophone section sounded like a fire engine. So anyway, that's all my fault. But it was a lot of fun. I think the students had fun as well. Lastly, I want to, some of you, and not everybody I know, but most of us get a magazine called the Neighbors Magazine. The issue coming out the 1st of October will have a paragraph in there from the mayor. That's Kettering and other communities have been doing it, and they finally reached out. We submit these a month in advance, so October 3rd is the deadline for November's edition. So if anybody has any ideas on what we might want to, what the mayor might want to communicate, I'd appreciate that as well. It's, doing something like that much early in the process, it just, what do you write about? So if you have any ideas, please let me know. All right. I think that is it for me right now. How about we start to my left, and we'll go Councilmember Curran.
I attended the Top Women Beavercreek at Walnut Grove, and that was really an honor to see the 5 ladies that they picked and the tremendous backgrounds that they have. And of course, as you all know better than I do, former council member Deborah Wallace was recognized for all of her work. So it was quite a nice occasion.
Very good.
Nothing for me tonight.
Nothing? Not a bit?
Nope.
Councilmember Little.
I'd just like to say congratulations to Decoy Art Fest and all their sponsors for Art in the Park.
That was wonderful.
It was a wonderful event. The weather was great. They had great vendors, great pottery. It was hot, but it was a great day. So just that is growing every year. And so I'm just wondering if they're going to have to move locations eventually, because I think that's something that's really nice for the region, and they're doing a great job. And then the second thing, I can't help it, I know it's on the list, but I am so excited about Try a Truck, October 13th. I love that every year. I think I've only had to miss it once, and I think that might have been before I was on council. And it's a great opportunity to bring the family out, and Parks Department, just another great event our parks helps host, so along with the Township Fire Department and Day Air Credit Union, but it's a great event to bring your family and your kids, and our Parks Department just does a great job. That's it.
Always a good one. Thank you. Councilmember Rushing.
No comment this evening. I believe everything will be covered. Thank you.
You're not even gonna cover the eager beavers?
I can. This past Saturday, the mayor and the vice mayor and I joined the chain gang, and we worked the Eager Beaver football team. I know some of the police officers, Officer Williams, Brown, and another officer joined at the game earlier than us, and some school administrators joined after us. But it was fun to put on the vest and be told what to do. Afterwards, we met with the cheerleaders who had a lot to say to us, and we're very excited. So this was a great opportunity.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you for being there. That's my van.
So Saturday was the celebration of peace in Beavercreek, and I brought a couple photos that I'll let you pass around. And there were about 40 people that marched from the high school to the Heartfulness Institute with the flags, and lots of people honked and waved hands and everything. And then at the Heartfulness Institute, we planted a white pine tree. That was an Indian tradition to signify peace for the American Indians. And then we went inside, and Mayor Stone read his proclamation, and also the Montgomery County Commissioner read one from Montgomery County. And we had Fred Armont talked about City of Peace, and he is actually a Beavercreek graduate. Is it 71?
71, yes.
71, which
Just
was
a youngster.
which was kind of fun to have him, the CEO of that organization, be a Beavercreek grad. I didn't know that until that day when he spoke. So, so that was for a first-time event. It was very good. There's always room to grow, and we'll see what we do next year. Thank you.
I agree with you. There's room to grow, so we'll discuss that down the road. Vice Mayor Garcia.
Yes, thank you. I will add that we were probably the best chain gang of
by,
the day.
by far.
By far.
By far.
I think we all did very well. I don't know how the police
If
did,
you
but I'm
asked-
just saying we were asked to come back.
If
So,
you ask the cheer section, we were for sure.
we got more hugs than anyone else on that field that day. So it was really great. It was actually great to see how the coaches interacted with the football players. I had a really good time listening to the refs try to explain the game to the third graders. I think I learned a little bit too. So we had a really good time. So I'm glad I got to do that. So thank you for the invite. On September 21st, Pete and I were invited to the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition, and Councilmember Van was there as well. We got to hear from Representative Turner and Lieutenant General Dennis McCarthy on a panel with additional business people from across the world here in the Dayton area, which was really nice. One thing that stuck out to me was the woman from P&G. She was talking about businesses overseas and the businesses that P&G has overseas versus here, and she made a point to state that 2 out of every 5 jobs in Ohio actually go towards sourcing and helping support those jobs that are overseas. So it was nice to hear that even though they do have some global businesses, a lot of the stuff still happens here in Ohio, which I thought was a big focus. They all seemed very excited to be in Dayton, to be talking to us that day, and it fell on International Peace Day. So it was nice to hear from everybody about the forces going on from Dayton around the world. So
Turner did a nice job.
he did a very good job. It was very well put together. So
All right, thank you. All right, move on. City Manager's report.
Curb replacement resurfacing, that is, the first part of that is happening now. Streets receiving curb replacements this year are Windmill Drive, Celia Drive, and Ripon Drive. Some concrete median replacement work will also be along North Fairfield Road, is also planned. So anytime you see some of that, we've already done some of the concrete work in preparation of resurfacing on Indian Ripple as well. Where you see the median concrete chipping away and falling, literally at times falling apart. The first part of the resurfacing program has been completed, just over 12 centerline miles. So the second part is the alternative streets, which will maximize the budget that we have with what we can cover. Once selected, these additional streets will be posted on the city's website. We have the alternative streets selected. a list of them, but we'll narrow it down to what can be budgeted. And of course, a lot of times you want to narrow it down by location proximity as well, so they're not jumping all around. They can get in and hit a number of streets at one time. It saves dollars that way. So we're not done yet with resurfacing. A program by Greene County Environmental Services is the tire drop-off. This is going to be on September 27th and October 25th. There is a fee. It's like $1. The grant actually requires a fee for them to charge, but you're talking about a car, light truck, it's $1, semi-truck tires $2, and a big, like maybe tractor tire is $5. But take advantage of this. If you have tires, they try to figure out why people are still having tires, because anytime you go get your car changed, they take your tires. But sometimes the most common excuse, because I'm on the committee that I go to, I think it's once a quarter, and we discuss, and they started, which was interesting, they started taking surveys of the people dropping off tires, and certain questions, where did you get the tires from? Is this because you changed your own tires, you have that equipment, or did you move into the house or inherit a house that had a whole bunch of already tires there? Did they wind up on your front lawn one day? What reasons? And they were a lot of them were the inheritance part. When I bought the house, the barn was out back and it had 40 tires in it, something along that nature. But you think after a while that would start to go away, because they've done this program for a number of years and it's been a lot of tires, and you keep wondering where are all these tires coming from. But so if you need this, like I said, it's October 27th and 25th, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Drop-off location is at the Greene County Environmental Services, 2145 Greenway Boulevard in Xenia. And you can call the 372-4478 extension 3, or email Lee dot, if I can say that, ELTZROTH at OH dot, boy, I should have not said this, NACDENAT.net. Say that 3 times. All right, and lastly, the Tri-Truck, yes, October 13th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Municipal Maintenance Facility at 789 Orchard Lane in Beavercreek. Please come out, Tri-Truck, the Fire Department, Open House, Parks. Thanks to the sponsors, their Credit Union, of course. So it should be a good time. Kids really love the trucks. Some of us older kids still love the trucks. There's something about fascination of a fire truck and a heavy equipment operator, plow and all that kind of stuff. Kids just love that. And the last thing I would say is I enjoyed Saturday morning, the entire morning spent with staff. We had not too many community come out, but staff and Mike Thonero, Kim Farrell, myself. We spent the whole morning out there with the rest of staff. Jeff Stein, which we are definitely going to miss. He's wrapping up his career here this year. He's announced that to us. And what's neat about it is that he has seen like Spicer Heights. He's like, when we did that last year, he's like, I was here and helped put this in brand new, and now I'm helping to replace it. He's been there 20, how long, Mike? 20, almost 30 years? Yeah. So he had seen a full circle of things he's replaced, and he's done such a good job. I like to thank Jeff. He's done a wonderful job on the direction and helping us with this equipment, and he's very knowledgeable on putting this stuff together. So I'm worried once he leaves how we're going to put this stuff together. But he's done a fantastic job, and kudos to all the park staff, though. Don't want to miss any of them, but Josh and Zach and who else was it? Bob, yeah, for helping that morning, Saturday morning. We had a good time and great weather because it was cool, but it wasn't rainy, and we spent most of the morning. And if you haven't made your way out to Rotary Park to look at it, it's not finished. We got things to do to it, but the infrastructure, so to speak, is up. So thanks to everyone who assisted on that. And that's all I have tonight.
Well, thank you. At this point, is there anyone here this evening that would like to address council? This is time for citizen comment. Anyone at all? Seeing none, we will move on. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.